Today is 28th of February 2022. It is a science day today, and we are speaking under the auspices of Rajasthan Sanskrit Academy. It gives me great pleasure. I am Dr. Ravi Sharma, and we will start with a short invocation as is traditional. Om Nishuseeda Ganapate Ganeshu Tvam Ahurvipratamam Kavinam Narite Tvad Kinchanare Mahamarkam Maghavan Chitramarcha, and a poem composed by my father for our temple where I was born, Rajguru Jagdish Chandraji. Radharadhitamaradyam Krishnam Chandra Viharinam Naumi Ratnapane Samstham Champavatyastu Mandire. So today we are embarking on a journey from Sadbrahm or dark matter to matter or matter mass energy. So I am a nuclear and particle space physicist. I have received NASA's Apollo Achievement Award, and I have worked as scientific secretary of ISRO as well. Many other things, but these are my contacts, especially if you have questions or comments on this presentation. Please send me a mail. Thank you. Here is the inspiration and the reason for today's talk, which is Vedic particle physics, which fully describes the subject matter that we are discussing today. Please see Dr. Khemchandji Sharma on the right hand side of this slide, who heard a talk from Dr. Dayanand Bhargav in 1987 and took notes on this slightly grayish paper and started a journey from 1987 that ended in 2007 with the publication of the book which is shown below the notes, which is what we are referring on the next slide. So here is Dr. Khemchandji Sharma from the right. Next, Dr. Bhargav, Professor Dayanand Bhargav, who inspired him and who inspires me constantly, Mrs. Bhargav on the left, and then I am the speaker sitting on the chair wearing black shirt. My deep gratitude to my elder brother, Dr. Subodh Sharma, PhD Structural Engineering, and Rajguru Kathabat of Jaipur. And I want to encourage follow-on work which I want Mohan Datta Sharma, son of late Khemchandji, and Amit Sharma, my son, to carry on with future work. Here is our reference for presentation today. It's Vedic particle physics. It has a ISBN number, and that was the last work done by Professor Khemchandji Sharma, and it is available for purchase. Please contact me. For so many centuries, nearly 3-4 millennia at least, the journey has been right clear in front of us, described in the Indian, now Indian, but originally Vedic knowledge book textbooks, which belong to the whole humanity. The earliest organization is in the name of VED-VIGYAAN, and then followed by Sayan, Yask, and later by Max Müller, a German rishi, who took pains to organize Vedas and collect them to become a printable form about 200 years ago. So the um, subject is this, that dark matter or Sadbrahm, which is not Indriya Gochar, which is beyond our reach, occupies 25% of known matter, while the universe, which is Asad Brahma, which is what we see and feel and we use our senses to know about, it is only 5%. And even in Vedas, we have not yet studied the concept of dark energy, and modern physics has no answer. At least there are thousands of papers on dark matter and dark energy where people are trying to reach it from the point of view of matter. They think it is some kind of limit of matter, which it is, but it is not yet reached, while for a few thousand years it's been described to us. We don't know why Asad Brahma, or this physical universe in which we live and see, why was it created? It is not known. But the seeable, knowable universe, which we call physical universe, which is Asad Brahma, is also known as mass energy. It began with a kamana, a seed of desire. Kama tadagrah samavartatadhi manasa reta prathamam asit. Sometimes I will use Sanskrit verses. Those who do not know can skip that part of recording. But that is best described as Swadhaya or self-energy, with which the Sadbrahma decided to manifest itself. So in order to understand that, we need to understand these 5 following things. We need to understand space, which is Dev, entities which are called lokas and devas, processes which are kriya, what kinds of processes take place, and then ultimately we will reach an understanding of the structure of the nucleus or nabhik, and ultimately we can also understand the structure of atoms. Once we get the structure of atoms, then we come into the era of open radiation, Akash, and other Panch Mahabhutas. So the properties of space are most difficult part to begin with. Those of you who have been exposed little bit to science know about ground state and excited states of either an atom or a nucleus. And when you cool down matter to ground state, it shows wonderful properties such as superconductivity, magnetic resonance, and Bose condensation. Bose was an Indian scientist who worked with Einstein. So these are excited states. So there is analogy. Think of Parabrahma, Sadbrahma, as ground state, the bottom line. And think of the Asad Brahma as these various colored lines above. So as the sleeping or inactive ground state becomes active, suddenly there is Pradurbhav of Jagat, or a beginning of the physical universe. We need to understand quantum field theory, which is described in my PhD thesis, easy reference, and it is at the end of the presentation. Ground state of quantum field is the dark matter, and the higher states are Asad Brahma. The quantum field energy, which is flowing in channels when you talk of a structure of how nucleus was formed, then it is in channels and it is known as Rit or a Rita, spelled as Rit as opposed to Satya. It appears to be everywhere except in Sadbrahm. Space nature of Rit is overlapping structure. It consists of various entities in it which are like quantum field with no manifestation of energy or mass, quanta with mass, without mass, and particles always with mass. And as we have already mentioned that there is processes or kriya. So there is no need for Big Bang. This is how from seed of desire the universe was started. Now, the nature of space. I like to concentrate on the two important areas, 7 positive spaces and 3 brothers or bhrata which are known as Trinabhi Chakram. There are various suktas in Rigveda of which most important for us are Nasadiya Sukta, Purush Sukta and Asyavamiya Suktas. We will get into them in the next series in detail. But Dev has 5 structures. They are known as Avartas, Vishnu Avart, Savitravart, Ishan Avart, Kalil Avart or Nachiketa Avart. These are 5 Avarts. There are 14 dimensions. 7 are positive in which the Devalokas, namely Satya, Tapa, Jana, Maha, Swaha, Bhu or Bhuva and Bhu. We talk it like Bhu, Bhuva, Swaha, Maha, Jana, Tapa, Satyam. These are the positive 7 dimensions. And similarly, there are 7 negative dimensions, which is where the space of electrons, which are known as Patal, Talatal, Vital, Sutal, Atal, Rasatal, and Mahatal. So let us first of all concentrate on these 3 brothers. Remember 5, 14, 3, 1. These are the spaces we are going to describe and structures we are going to describe. So the partition from center of a circle all the way to the periphery or the rim of the circle, think of a wheel. So the journey from center to the rim is divided in 3 parts, Palita, Ashna and Ghrita Prishta. And the Asyavamiya first sukta starts with that, which says Asyavamasya Palitasya Hotastasya Bhrata Madhyamo Atyashnah Tritiyo Bhrata Ghrita Prishto Asyatrapashyam Vishpatim Saptaputram. At the end of Ghrita Prishna, you have a 7th dimension. You have completed 7 dimensions. That's why Saptaputra word is used. And there is an outside space outside of nucleus atom, which is Nagaloka or the space of radiation. So we are still describing the structure of space. There is Kshira, which is like Dwa Suparna. You will see that it is like Suparna, like a bird in the sky or a chiti. There is Arnava. The Rudra is the first one to see the formations in the Dyav first. And then the vectors are Sapta and Ashwa. Aditi has given birth to Devas. First one Among them is Indra or Ka, as we will come to that, and Purusha. Purusha is the structure of space. A complete structure like that of nucleus is called Richa. And Richa can also include a whole galaxy. The growth of space follows the following pattern. Sadbrahma starts with Dyav, and in the inside of the nucleus, from the Dyav part, when A, as you will see, establishes itself and creates a structure, Antariksha is the inner space inside the nucleus. And when Antariksha is finished by Ghritarishta, outside of the nucleus in atomic and Nagaloka space is Akash. There are hundreds of verses in Rig Veda which describe this transition from Sad to Asad Brahma. Here we are describing now space we have described. Now we are describing the lokas or entities or 7 dimensions of positive devlokas. The first structure, which is from Dr. Khemchandji's book, is the establishment of A. A is Vishnu, and the other thing that it creates is a breathing structure of the Rita. You see some closely spaced dots and some sparse dots, and so that is the breathing structure. Also Abhu and Hiranyagarbha are created here. But the most important thing for us to learn is that these spirals are of those of particle called Na. Sorry, it's not yet a particle. It is an entity, it is a quanta of field energy which has come into this space, and Vishnu forces it out with a lot of energy, quantum field energy. That field energy is not yet seen by anything that we know today. But it slowly transforms itself in affine space where we forget the origin, and this Na as a monad goes into higher dimensional spaces, 7 spaces, and forms Sapta. So for A, we have a description along with Na. So the first one of Nasadiya Sukta is Na Asid, Na Asat Asid, Na Iti Sat Asid, Tadanim Na Asid Raja No Iti Vyoma Paroyat, Kim A Avarivahi, Kim A Avarivariti Kuhakasya Sharman Nambha Kimasit Gahanam Gabhiram. So in this verse both A and Na are described. A is Ajanma, Aj or Vishnu, and Na will take different names in space. So who is holding A? Tistro matas trina pitri vibradayet urdhvastasyo na im avalampayanti. So Na is moving in the womb of the mother dynamically with the help of Vishnu. This Na is the entity which knows Sad because it was able to see it as it was created, and it lives in Asad and creates Asad further. So Na transforms it and is known by different names. We will see some of them as eventually it becomes Ka particle or Indra, which is described right here on this page. So Ka dadarsh prathama jayamanam asthanvantam yat anastha vibharti, meaning it is both without bones and like with bones. So it exists in all three forms when we read the whole verse, as liquid like blood, solid like bones, and vapor like vayu. So all three forms it takes and exists. The Indra is ka dadarsh prathamam jayamanam asthanvantam yad anastha vibharti. Also, ka adha ved ka ih pravochat kutah ajata kutah iyam visrushti. This is how Indra is described. There are many intermediate entities of Na, which are Na and Ka, which are described as Mitra, Varuna, Aryama, Maruta, Soma in various names in Vedas. The Ashvino is an interesting entity which leads to two things of importance in this physical universe, two types of photons and 6 types of quarks. So it leads to Trivartma and Satvrindaraka, and it's like a pair. So seventh dimension has the largest area. If you plot the area of a 7-dimensional, 8-dimensional, 10-dimensional hypercircle, you will see that the maximum occurs just after 7. So as the number of dimensions increases, at 7 we reach maximum. So 7 is called Sapta, but when it goes to 8th dimension, the quantum field energy gets compressed, and therefore that energy goes to 8th dimension, and the pair of 7 and 8 is what Ashvinav is. And in between 7 and 8 structures, the Ka is also present as a bridge between 7 and 8. So this 16-pronged structure is Ashvinav. That is how it is described. Ya im chakara nasah asya veda ya im tadarsha, and so on. It goes on. So there are enough examples of other particles and other structures that evolve. Photons we talked about. The visible photons are known as Suryasya Chakshuhu. But there is a mystery about dark photons. What do? Do they help you create quarks? Do they help you create neutrinos? We don't know yet fully. So that is a subject of further study. And Ashvinov's in the K, finally, between K and Ashvinov, we get to Ghritaprishta part, and that is where Asthanvantam, or the mass-full bodies, are created by combination of Shadvrindarakas, Trivartmas, and mass particles, because Indra is having a composite vector of 10 mass particles. So they all form into more permanent, long-lasting, stable structures, which we call neutrons, protons, and electrons. Electrons, being negative charged, go out into outside of this positive space into Patala Lokas, or the bhuvanas, as they are also known as negative energy states. There is a lot of interaction, different ways of modeling that interaction, understanding that interaction as quantum field to quantum field interaction, as quanta which are definable both as particle and waves, and as flow of particles. So all this happens in Rita, different forms of Rita and different parts of these particles. These resonances also exist beyond atomic space. Now we come to processes or kriyas. These kriyas are Swas Pran Kriya, which we already described, Annadi Agni Kriya, Yajna Kriya, which is transforming or simulating the environment, reenacting the creation of universes through Yajna. We can simulate it. That's why you do Yajna, Havan, etc. So there is a process describing of birth known as Jata hai. There is a process described of Mithunaso or creation of life. There is a concept of mother, father and child, that process. There is view, motion, which is Suparna. There is animal and human voices like Krandan, Senachiti, like horses neighing, and so on. So there are a lot of processes described in various richas of Rigveda, and patterns are also created, and these richas and chandas. This is a single diagram where if you see what we saw in A and Na and in the structure of Purusha, which was in the fifth dimension, Sahasrasirha Purusha, Sahasraksha, Sahasrapat, that is this bottom chakra. And from there, Ka is evolved or Indra is evolved. And then you see the Shad Vrindarakas and the photons, and Trivartmas are in this green and red form with positive and negative and zero charge. And these help you form the proton, the neutron in the black, and the electrons in the red. So the structure of the whole nucleus is highlighted in part of this diagram from Khemchandji's work. It clearly tells us a lot, and it takes 400 pages or so to describe these processes that I have summarized to you in about 25 minutes. What are the next steps? Next steps for future series would dive deeper into these 1440 entities or devas, 720 Sapta Shatani Vinshati. So 2 spins, 1440, etc. Many things we can do in multidimensional geometry, and I'm amazed that they were knowing multidimensional geometry thousands of years ago. And there are lot of overlays of axes, which are also known as akshas. And what part really the quarks play in detail, how the atoms are bonded in chemistry, and what is the effect of Einstein's mass energy equation, E equal to mc square, how Akasha is formed as Go, means massful particles. Arthapindam is another name of Go, and Gau is Prithvi, which means first solid particle or the collection of our earth particles. In modern physics, there are 89 particles. We need to count how many we have in Vedic descriptions. And there is a mystery of dark energy, which I think, very obliquely I think, is related to Sanchar Pratisanchar, or disappearance of matter back into dark matter, or end of a yuga, or end of one cycle of universe, physical universe, as described to us in the Vedas. So, next, finally, I want to thank Rajasthan Academy of Sciences, Sanskrit, Rajasthan Sanskrit Academy, for inviting me to give this presentation.